Grand Rising. Long time no see. Been pretty busy. You see you see me woofing now. I might have just missed where's the page. But let me know what city and state you coming in from. Let me know what interests you most about Blueprint for Black Power. Um, if you haven't gotten any uh notifications, it's because I haven't been on. I've been sort of busy for the last couple of weeks trying to put some things in motion. I might even want to say trying put in some things in motion and pushing forward with some things that really be help that will really help out as far as efficiency with everything that I'm doing. So it's nothing but you know great thoughts and positivity free flowing right now. So I'm very grateful for that. I feel like I did stop about here, so I'm gonna just start here because I don't plan on being on here long. I just wanted to get something in prior to um, getting some rest. Education for servitude, corporate philanthropy, and the shaping of Black higher education. The prospect of Black education for social equality. The history of Black higher education essentially involves the origin and evolution of the Black private college system, beginning from the Reconstruction era to World War II. This is the case because up to 1938, for quite some time thereafter, when the United States Supreme Court ordered the states to provide substantially equal facilities for Black and white state and land grant colleges, the vast majority of Black college students were enrolled in private institutions of higher learning. And these institutions were controlled or identified with Black church organizations, white missionary industrial philanthropy. As late as 1930, Black church organizations controlled colleges, which enrolled 14% of Black students. Missionary industrial philanthropy controlled colleges, which enrolled 61% of those students. The Black state and land grant colleges enrolled most of the remaining 25%. The mission societies made their most important contributions to Black higher education from the 1860s to 1915. By then, the mission of Black and professional students, pardon me, by then, the mission societies had established over 30 colleges attended by the majority of Black and professional students. Many of these institutions were and remain the leading Black centers of higher learning. The triumph of Black industrial education. Missionary philanthropy was soon replaced by industrial corporate philanthropy as the dominant force, shaping the quality, character, mission of Black higher education. By the turn of the century, mission philanthropy, the organizations such as the American Baptist Home Society, pardon me, American Baptist Home Mission Society, the American Missionary Association, the Methodist Episcopal Freedmen's Aid Society, Presbyterian Board of Missions for the Freedmen, and older Northern missionary societies were virtually bankrupt, and their campaign to develop Black higher education sputtered out before getting inside of their goal, the extension of equal education, civil, and political rights to African Americans. The colleges they had supported were left without sufficient endowments to ensure their survival. From the eve of the First World War onward, industrial philanthropy gained ascendance as the major force in Black higher education after having struggled with missionary philanthropy for that position since 1867, when the Peabody Educational Fund was established. Beginning about 1918, Black colleges became increasingly dependent on industrial philanthropy to fund faculty salaries, retirement benefits, scientific equipment, laboratories, substantial endowments, libraries, and other material resources necessary for colleges to be recognized as accredited institutions. Crucial to the economic viability and educational development of Black private colleges were the philanthropic organizations financed primarily by Northern industrial capitalists, such as the Southern Education Board, founded in 1901, and the General Education Board, established by John D. Rockefeller in 1902. The former board was absorbed into the latter in 1914 under the title of the General Education Board. The General Education Board, which served as a clearinghouse for industrial philanthropy, which markedly influenced the character of Southern education through its disbursements of grants to the region's educational institutions and state departments of education, became the premier philanthropic trust among a member of powerful Northern industrial funds. By 1909, Rockefeller had supplemented his initial grant of $1 million by others amounting to $53 million. As Anderson notes, by 1921, Rockefeller had personally donated $29 million to the board. Moreover, the board became an interlocking di- di- directorate of Northern Industrial Philanthropy as its members directed disbursements of old and new foundations. The General Education Board either directly controls such funds as the Peabody and Slater funds, or gained a corporation of funds such as the Phelps-Stokes, Julius Rosenwald, Carnegie Corporation, and the Laura Spelman Rockefeller funds, all established between 1902 and 1917. Anderson quotes historian Lewis Harlan as saying that the General Education Board exercised virtual monopolistic control of educational philanthropy for the South and the Negro. Anderson himself further asserts that the role of the industrial philanthropy in shaping Black education then is largely a story of the General Education Board and its trustees, agents, and cooperating foundations. The ascendance of industrial or corporate philanthropy in determining the character of Black education represented no mere change in the funding of Black education from missionary to industrial philanthropic hands, but more importantly, it represented a seismic change in the perception of the roles Blacks were to play in Southern society and the nation as a whole. Missionary leaders tended to be politically liberal, basically equalitarian in their views of civil rights and race relations. They generally saw Black higher education institutions as primarily designed to prepare a college bred Black leadership to uplift the Black masses from the legacy of slavery and to lead the ex slaves into the mainstream national culture, largely free to do and become what they choose, limited by their own intrinsic worth and efforts. To this end, the missionary philanthropists offered their Black students the New England college curriculum, a regimen including the study of Greek and Latin of Western civilization and its great events, and literary and philosophical works of such writers such as Shakespeare, Locke, Descartes, as the keys to Black social progress. This educational orientation and ideology which supported it were, for the most part, diametrically opposed to those of industrial philanthropy. Black education in the service of white domination. Equal rights for Southern Blacks was of little or no concern to Northern businessmen. They had virtually no interest in transforming the region's racial caste system. In fact, they sought to stabilize Southern society by organizing its industrial market, restoring its agricultural prosperity, and achieving racial cooperation on Southern white terms by educationally preparing Blacks to work efficiently within that system. Negro industrial training was recognized by industrial philanthropists as the most appropriate form of education for Blacks who were expected to help maintain the racial order and political stability and help advance the material prosperity of the South by keeping to their assigned place and playing their designed roles in the social and economic system of that region. We must add here that the place and role of Blacks in the South as perceived by Northern industrial philanthropists was not significantly different from their perception of the place and role of Blacks in the North and in America in general. The industrial model of Black education was designed to develop habits of industry, instill an appreciation for the dignity of labor, and to primarily train a cadre of conservative Black teachers or guides who were expected to help adjust Afro-Americans to a subordinate role in Southern political economy. Any review of the perceptions of the primary purposes of Black education held by the white corporate elite today will quickly reveal they do not differ fundamentally from those of their counterparts during the early to mid 1900s. Breach. Higher education for the few. In general, the Northern industrial funds, including the Rockefeller Finance General Education Board, the Peabody, Slater, Johns, Phelps, Stokes, and Rosenwald, avoided giving support to Black higher education. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries. This is not to say that industrial philanthropists were totally and exclusively committed to the idea of Black industrial education. While they had no intention of making Black higher education broadly accessible to a college-age population of over 250,000 Black youths in the first 2 decades of the 1900s, these philanthropists did support the idea of developing a very smaller number, 2 high-quality universities and 3 hybrid colleges of Black institutions of higher learning designed primarily to produce educated leaders whose role it was to inculcate white American values into the Black masses. At its highest levels, Black education was to be an education for service, education designed to supplementarily improve and support Southern and American industrial efficiency. Black intellectuals were still expected to uncomplainingly accept the South's and America's racial hierarchy. From 1902 to 1960, the General Education Board expended slightly less than 41,500,000 on Black higher education. However, Black higher education was and still remains dreadfully underfunded. The legacy of the corporate funding of Black education. Black colleges remain dependent on industrial philanthropy, and the wealthiest among them is not endowed sufficiently to garner a major portion of their annual income for investments. Pardon me, from investments. Anderson notes that in 1958, the combined endowment of UNCF, United Negro College Fund colleges, was less than the endowment of Northwestern University. The combined endowment of the 41 member colleges pales in significance compared to the $6 billion endowment of Harvard University, which is now in the second year of a 5-year drive to raise $2 billion to eliminate deficits and ensure up its economic well-being. The whole of the 41 United Negro College Fund colleges must satisfy themselves with raising a few $1,000,000 to be shared among themselves. They are still held hostage to the self-serving political economic ideology and to the miserly philanthropic largesse, LARGESSE, of industrial funds like the Ford, Sloan, and Taconic Foundations, the Duke and Mellon Charitable Trust, Mellon, MELLON Charitable Trust, Duke and Mellon Charitable Trust, among other foundations which replaced the General Education Board after it was phased out in the 1950s. The industrial foundations are still a powerful force, and Black higher education as Black colleges must still beseech them for gifts to aid in their day-to-day struggles to survive. As a result, Black colleges must retain conservative curricula, restrict themselves to preparing their students to serve white corporate interests, to work for white-owned and controlled companies and institutions, and to assist white supremacy in its domination and exploitation of African peoples. The education of Blacks in predominantly white colleges and universities is fundamentally no different. Education in these institutions also falls heavily under the mercenary influence of corporate philanthropy, as we have already discussed. It is obviously not the intention of white industrial philanthropy and the white powers that be in education that Black higher education play a major role in liberating African peoples and nations from white political economic domination and empowering those same peoples and nations to challenge the industrial, military, and technological hegemony of white peoples and nations. I'm going to end it there for today. And when we begin again on part 30, Foundations and Think Tanks, the selling of Newt Gingrich and the Republican Party in 1994. I felt as though I read that, but whatever it is, we just going to push through because I would love to get into this next chapter. And we still got a ways to go. And I know I've been taking my time, but they say good things come to those that wait. So we on 193, we're trying to get to 208. We should be there in the next couple of days, and then we'll be in chapter 10. Well, I hope your day is great, and I hope your tomorrow is greater. Race first at all times, and at all times, race first.